Welcome to CXER. That's the Customer Experience Engineering with me, Al Hughes. Glad you could make it. It's the inaugural show, and I had to think long and hard. Well, I didn't actually have to think long and hard about who was going to be my first guest, because it was a pretty easy choice, to be fair. With me today on the first episode of CXER is Katy Forsyth.
Hi,
Hello.
Al.
How are you?
Very good, thank you, and lovely to be here with you.
I'm delighted to have you. I'm so excited to have you here because this is... Well, I don't know. We've known each other for 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't know how many years.
Do you know what?
A long time.
Yeah, a long time.
A long time. And believe it or not, this is the first time that we've actually been in the same room.
Physically in the same room, thanks to COVID.
And Katy is Katy's a giant in the recruitment world. She's going to get pretty embarrassed as we go into this whole episode, I can tell you now, because she's one of the most modest people that I've ever met, who does the amount of good that she does do in the industry. So Katy founded and owns and runs RED Recruitment.
Yeah.
Manchester-based.
No, Bristol-based.
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 Not Manchester-based.
Well,
shame on me.
No, not shame on you at all. I love the fact you think I'm from Manchester. I love it.
I love Bristol.
And we do probably more work in Manchester than we do Bristol. So, but Bristol-based, but work all across the UK.
So do you want to tell, for the couple of people in the UK who might not know you, do you want to talk to us about how you set it up? Why did you set it up? Who are you? What do you do?
Really briefly, potted history, because I'm sure it's pretty dull. But 2001, I was working for a really large global recruiter. Right. And we were just starting to set up a contact centre division. And I was very fortunate to be a senior lead in that setup. And I just decided I didn't like working in that big corporate way. I was head of sales for them, and decided that actually there was a space in the marketplace for a high quality specialist contact centre recruiter. And so in 2001, set RED up to be just that. And the rest is literally history, 25 years of history.
Amazing. It's really amazing. And I think this is certainly from my perspective, but I can tell you, because as you know, I've been in the industry for a long time.
Yeah, indeed.
And through conversations I have had and continue to have regularly with people, when we talk about recruitment, you're typically one of the very first names and brands.
Oh, well, that's kind of it.
On people's, not genuinely on the end of people's tongues. And I think that says a lot. It's a pretty swamped and saturated industry, the recruitment industry within contact centres specifically. But you know, you need a secret sauce. You need a special MO, I think, to stand out. And I think I know what yours is. What would you say yours is? Why are you so successful in your field?
I would say it's because our consultants and I live and die by the knowledge we have. And all we do is contact centre. And we're very proud to be ambassadors of contact centre. It's such an amazing industry, contact centre. And we're really proud of supporting the industry. So I think that's our secret, really. We don't do it because we're recruiters who happen to do contact centre. We do it because we love contact centre and we support the industry. But
there's a way that you do it which stands out for me as well. And I think I see it all the time, and how you lead your people within your business as well. And you are, I bang on all the time about non-hierarchical leadership being the future. And it's treat people as equals.
Yes,
and you collaborate with your team. You don't manage them and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And culture is very important in that respect. You embody that. The way that you lead your team is pretty impressive, right?
I hope so. I'm not sure the whole team would agree.
Not all the time.
And I laugh at that. I mean, I sit in the office, I answer the phones as much as they do, and I get told to work from home more, I can tell you. But yeah, I would say that I am as involved, and I wouldn't ask the team to do anything that I wouldn't do myself.
And that's it.
And and I'm really precious about that, and I'm sure they feel that they're driven pretty hard, but they're passionate about what they do, and I'm proud to say if I wasn't there, probably you wouldn't feel it too much.
Sure. So I mean, and I think driven very hard, you say, and I think that it's true that when people feel valued, respected, trusted, consulted, and all that great stuff within the place they work, they will drive themselves hard for you. They will jump you through hoops of fire for the brand, wouldn't they? And I think we see that certainly from your team a lot, that the commitment to the way they work and how they do it.
Yeah, I think so. I think there's and I won't go into it on this for sure, but there's there's nothing worse than telling someone you're a recruiter, right? They're try and sit at a dinner party and say, number one, you're a recruiter, and number two, you're a recruiter in contact centres. Could you get any worse a combination for reputation of industries? But our guys are really proud of being recruiters, and without going into the details of it, recruiters have this reputation of doing the job they do because they're paid really well and they get these huge commissions. Our model doesn't work like that. It works more on a service model. Our guys don't call and make 50 outbound calls a week to say, got any jobs, mate? You will never get that off RED. We're more consultative about that. But I think I had one of my proudest moments. Only recently, we were doing a massive project for a big outsourcer who needed 250 people and gave us 1 working day's notice for them. Wow. So the whole team who were on that mass volume delivery team stayed and worked overtime without being asked. They worked all of the Friday night, all Saturday, all Sunday. They worked all Monday evening. And by the Tuesday morning, having been given the sign-off at 5 o'clock on Friday night, we had 250 high-quality contact centre temps starting. And I thought to myself, that's when you know they're brilliant. And they didn't have to do that. They're not contracted to do that. But they did that. Not for me, by the way, not for me, but because they love not letting their clients down. And this isn't a sale, but that's what our industry, contact centres are like that. Yeah. Any BPO works like that.
It's always...
And it's about your customer.
Yeah, absolutely. And that whole experience around that happening in the 11th hour is very much how the industry operates. Absolutely. Holistically. But I do think you're being a bit hard on yourself by saying that they didn't do it for you. And I don't mean this in a sycophantic way, but you find that people operate in that way, the way you've just described your team operated, when their back was against the wall, proactively, innovatively, enthusiastically, because they love the way that they're being led, because they love the culture they work in. It's not all about you, but you certainly light the fuse, right?
Well, hopefully.
Steve Jobs said famously, when he first joined Apple, he obviously was evicted and he came back. And when he came back, he came back, and one of his demands when he came back was, I'll come back, but I have to have control of 2 things, or heavy influence on 2 things. He said, 1, recruitment. Yeah. And he said, 2, work culture. And the work culture that he focused on was where he said, look, we've recruited, at the time it was something like 30, 40 people. We've recruited this team of people. Yeah. We've recruited them because we believe in them. We've recruited them because we think they're clever and they've got skills. So they must not ever need to go through 30 rounds of sign-off for anything. No. We let them get on with it and remember that we've recruited them because they're clever. So we let them be clever and run our business for us. And I think when people lead like that, teams flourish. Yes. I'm seeing some of that in RED.
Well, that's very kind for you. I'll take that. Yeah. And I do agree. We have that sort of mantra in the office. As so many, I'm fortunate to work with a lot of clients and we see some brilliant management across the industry, don't we? But we definitely have that mantra in the office of, do you know what? Bounce off the walls a bit. Do everything with good intent and with integrity. And what's the worst that you can do? We're a regulated industry, so don't break your regulations. But in your heart, you're trying to do the right thing. So do the best that you can do. And we can mop up anything after you and take it as a learn. But we're much more on the virgin piece of advice of say you can do it and work out how after.
That's it. Absolutely. Yeah. Break it and then apologise.
Exactly.
So listen, you've built RED Recruitment into what pretty much is a leading voice within the industry. And this is straight into a big question for you then. So given how quickly customer behaviour and technology are shifting, and I've and I'm sure you would agree with this, we've seen a lot of change in the industry over the last couple of decades. But I've never seen it change so quickly and so fast. As rapidly. Right? As it has recently. Customer behaviour and demand is what a customer expects has changed vertically in the last 3 years. Yeah. As has technology. So what's the biggest, based with that as a frame of reference, what's the biggest change you've seen in the type of people that contact centres today are looking for you to hire on their behalf? Because that's changed, hasn't it? Or has it? Are we keeping up with pace?
Do you know what? It's such an interesting question, this, because I get asked it all the time, obviously. And actually, you know, when you've worked in the industry as long as we have, and if I look back to the early 90s when I started in the industry, and you look at the ingredient list of what makes a good agent, right? So it's not actually changed, has it? Be great with customer, be great at communicating, voice and written.
Yeah.
Be a good problem solver, because we've got to deal with complaints. Be empathetic and be good with tech. And actually, those 5 things have never changed since you and I started in this industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so the recipe and the prioritization of those skills has changed. But you look at the skills matrices and the job specs that we get, and those are the 5 key elements. So nothing has actually changed on the skill type.
Yeah.
But what has changed, and that we're terrible at understanding as an industry, because largely the big decision makers are Gen X or older millennials, is how those skills are shown in today's talent. Because if you get new entrant talent, how they demonstrate those skills is completely different to how you and I would have done.
Yeah.
So what we're asking for hasn't changed. And unfortunately, and this is what we're battling so hard as an industry, how we're trying to assess whether someone's got that hasn't changed as much as it should have done. There are some brilliant examples. But how the worker shows them has changed. And I'll give you a really crude example of that, probably. So if you look at resilience, how many times... it drives me mad out.
I get it. I feel it as well.
It's the most overused word in contact centre recruitment. We need them to be resilient. Well, no, you know, of course we need them to be. We talked about resilience since the 90s. If I'd have thought of a resilience test when I was first asked for one, I wouldn't still be running RED now, let me tell you. So resilience, we talk about, well, today's workforce aren't resilient. Absolute nonsense. Today's workforce are the most resilient workforce we have ever had.
Based on, what's your observation on that? Based on what?
Based on the fact they're Gen Zs, by and large. Over 90% of contact centre agents are Gen Zs. And Gen Zs had a really tough, they were born post-terrorism, so they've always looked over their shoulders. Yeah. They grew up as children in the Great Recession, so saw their parents leaving big corporates in brown paper boxes saying, I haven't got a job anymore. Yeah. You know, let's talk about the extremes. They then came into young adulthood during COVID, schooled at home, fell out into a workforce that wasn't ready for them. There were no jobs, even though they're the most highly educated generation we've got.
What do you think of the view that particular generation, and I hear this a lot as well in the industry, they're responsible for the increase we've seen in contact centre attrition because of their feeling of entitlement. Yeah. And it bothers me when I hear it, right? And I know what your answer is going to be, because it's going to be the same as mine. But what do you think of that? Because I'm hearing that a lot. Yeah. You know? Actually, do you know what? I've got high attrition in my business, and I'm going to blame that.
It's all the agent's fault.
Yeah, I'm going to blame that agent. I'm not going to say it's my work culture or the calibre or competency of my leadership that I'm responsible for developing. I'm not going to say that it's the wages that I pay, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. The finger very rarely turns inward. But is that problematic? I mean, is that scaring people away from the industry?
You know, if we look at the reputation of the industry, that's such a massive topic, and I'm sure we'll touch on it. But the whole entitlement issue is a real problem. And it's not the problem of the agent. Mm-hmm. It's the problem of we have leadership that is now largely, if you look at team leaders, majority are millennials, some Gen Zs, just frighteningly, just touching into leadership now, but majority millennials who think that Gen Zs behave the way they do, and they don't. And the biggest challenge, and let's not even talk about the C-suite team who are largely Gen X, who expect everyone to behave like we did when we were coming into the workplace. That's a real problem. You know, that's a massive issue. That difference between the C-suite
I don't, sorry to interrupt, but I don't think the bridge between the two is being looked at properly.
No, absolutely.
How do I transport myself from this agent level to that C-suite level? What's the course that I take?
Absolutely.
I can't see that there's a career built bridge for that.
No, there are some great examples of it, and we will absolutely get sort that out as an industry. But if we can do that, and actually if we can stop our team leaders saying our agents are entitled, and actually understanding today's workforce, because they're not entitled, they're brilliant, but they have different expectations. And an expectation isn't something that is born from entitlement. It's in nature. Yeah. It's grown in them through their experiences. And when you're sat in your bedroom learning, saying best endeavours, and then when you fall into a workplace and you've got Boris Johnson saying, we'll furlough you at home, because they were the generation that were most affected by furlough. Yeah. Best endeavours, sit at home, we'll pay you. Funnily enough, that drives different behaviours. Yeah. But what they're not is entitled or lazy. They are not lazy. Many of them have 2 or 3 jobs and had 2 or 3 jobs during COVID. What they are is wired differently. Yeah. But they want to stay with a brand. And no one can tell me any different. I know the data, and without being a bore, 83% in the most recent data of call centre agents, contact centre agents, come into the industry wanting to develop a career.
Excellent, yes.
But they do not want to develop a career as a call centre, contact centre agent. Yeah. They want to develop a career with a brand, and they see contact centre as a brilliant start point. And isn't it just? Look at the C-suites of the FTSE 100. Yep. The C-suites of the FTSE 100, just over 20% have some contact centre in their background. Look at Stephen Bartlett, who every Gen Z respects. God. What a great asset he is for our industry.
For our country.
I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my contact centre background. Yeah. And I entirely agree with that. Contact centre is a great starting point. So for me, we've got to get over this, they're entitled. No, they're not. They see contact centre as a great start, but they don't want to be. As none of us did.
But they have expectations.
They don't want to be there in 5 years' time as an agent.
Yeah. But who does?
Yeah, exactly. None of us did. And I encourage anybody who is looking at attrition to do that job. Go on the phones for just 2 days.
And I think
get back to the floor and realise how much this job's changed.
You typically will find that the people who have those views about entitlement and the inability, no, they've got the ability, but they choose not to interrogate themselves and how much of that responsibility is theirs. You'll find that most of those people are people who haven't or choose not to get that close to the front line, to pick up the phone, to take complaint calls, to do the agent's job, to talk to the agents about the pain that they feel so they can transform it into, joy. And these are the people who lead from a distance, typically, I think. Yeah. And I think that's another subject for maybe another conversation, but I always, when I'm in business, maybe I'm looking at a business to help a contact centre or the business improve their culture. One of the things that I very often identify, probably more than 90% of the time, is the gap between the exec and the frontline call or contact handler is massive. Well, I talk to agents a lot and say, do you know who your executive team are? And the atypical answer is they kind of know the CEO's name because it's a CEO. Yeah. But they've never maybe shaken hands or sat down and had a conversation. How often do these guys come and talk to you? How often are you in the same room around the same table? Never.
And it's so important because they are inspiring them to stay with that brand. Yeah. And I'd love this to be the RED legacy, really, and my legacy is about awakening the industry to quite how much the modern worker has changed. But not only the worker and what they look like, when they appear for interview, how they present themselves, what they look like on paper. The CVs are not the same and neither should they be. But there's this huge gulf of difference between what leaders who grew up through contact centres in the 90s, the 2000s, see the job to be compared to what the agent of today is experiencing that job to be. And the change isn't in the core skills of the job. The change is in the intensity of the job.
Yeah, see, this is where you stand out for me. This is why I'm just over the moon that you're sitting here today. a lot of people who lead and work in the recruitment industry, and I mean, absolutely no disrespect for this, right? Because there's some fabulous businesses out there.
Totally.
And some really skilled people that, I mean, you've heard me say in the past, I think the two most important heartbeats that support operational delivery that aren't operations are recruitment and HR.
Yeah.
I think they're the two jugular veins for the business.
Yeah.
But the difference, I think, between some of those people and you, and the reason that I was delighted for you to come here today, is that you approach this from a very human angle. How people feel and how people not cope and survive, but how they have the opportunity to thrive and grow within the roles that you place them into is ultimately critically important to you on a human level. And I think for me, that's the difference. And when we start to understand that it's our responsibility to look beyond the bottom line and the volume that we're asked to deliver.
Totally.
And we see that from that human angle.
See the human.
And I think for me, you do that as it's part of your DNA. And it's part of your team's DNA. But can I just say one other thing before you hold that thought? When you said earlier, the RED legacy, I just thought that was a phenomenal 2 words put together, the RED legacy. And what sprung to mind, and I don't even need
Makes me feel old.
But I think I'm right in saying this. And what you guys can't see behind the scenes, behind the cameras right now, Katie's brought her brand new marketing team. And these guys are here. And I'm pretty sure you picked up on the 2 words RED legacy and your marketing wheels went into motion straight away. I think there's something there. And I'm thinking academy and sort of passing those skills on. But anyway, sorry. You were saying.
No, I can't think what I was going to say. But the human aspect.
Yeah, that's it.
You'll hear me when I train our new consultants or people who are moving through our consultancy. I'll always say to them, finding a job and choosing a job, it doesn't matter. We have plenty of businesses that we work with. And by the way, most contact centres are brilliant with people. Yeah. Unfortunately, the contact centres who treat people badly get too much press. There are many centres that treat people brilliantly.
Yeah, I would say more contact centres treat people brilliantly.
Totally.
I would say that rather than most contact centres personally.
Yes.
I think it's getting better.
It is definitely getting better.
Yeah.
And we definitely see it from the human angle because, at the end of the day, recruiters sell people, right? So we quite rightly are significantly regulated, and getting a new job is a life-changing event for someone, as we all know.
100%.
So actually, we have to treat people in a really human, with absolute integrity. And that's no different when they start on day one and they start their onboarding and their training and everything else. Yeah. And for me, there's lots of improvements that we can make as an industry there. But we are dealing with humans and we are not dealing with commodities or numbers.
Hallelujah, sister.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that.
And there's plenty of work to do there, as you say.
I totally agree. And that's so refreshing because, unfortunately, I don't hear it often enough.
Yeah.
It is getting better, like you say, for sure. And I come from an operational background. And, I remember 2 decades ago when I started talking about this, because I've always banged on about culture and how culture is vitally important.
Yeah.
It's the culture that delivers the skills, that delivers the commitment to the brand and so on and so on.
Yeah.
That affects attrition and reduces attrition and etc. And I remember being laughed out of boardrooms.
Yeah.
Sitting in boardrooms going,
culture.
Oh, yeah. What are you talking about? I remember, he's still in the industry, so I won't say who, but a gentleman in a boardroom who I worked with for a while, and I still see now and again, stopped me mid-sentence when I was talking about, they had asked me to go away as a business and look at methods of reducing. They appreciate attrition. You need some amount of attrition.
Yeah. Healthy attrition.
Right? But the attrition they were hemorrhaging people. And it was obvious. It was all about culture and how people felt undervalued. So I came back and my answer was around investing in work culture in the right way. And it all starts at recruitment and onboarding and all that stuff, right? And he stopped me halfway through and said, look, I don't mean to be rude, but can we just dispense with the fairy tales and the nonsense and focus on what matters? And those were almost his exact words. And that was the point where I could easily just have gone, why am I even bothered? But actually what it did was it made me dig my heels in harder.
Absolutely.
And probably probably the single conversation as to why I then became a champion of culture within our industry. And that's why I think recruitment is vital, because recruitment is part of the work culture, or the work culture, the success of the work culture and how it defends and grows the business. If you take that back to one of its genesis points, it's recruitment.
Yeah.
And it's onboarding. Let me ask you a question that I wasn't going to ask you, but I want to ask you now.
Yeah.
So you do all this hard work, your team work really hard, you recruit the right volume for the demand for a particular client. The client might not be particularly overly skilled, say, in how to take that from that point forward.
Yeah.
How often do you get frustrated at poor onboarding that you're not a part of, but the client is responsible for? You do the great work, you find the right people, they're a great fit, they've got all the potential, but the onboarding experience is so dire that early onset attrition happens, and all that work seems to be evaporating.
Yes.
How does that feel?
And it's the biggest threat to the recruitment industry at the moment.
Is it really? That was
the
my next
biggest
question.
threat,
So it's still there.
And it's always been a problem, right? Training, onboarding, but it's never been as big a problem. And that early attrition is now well over 30% of the total annual attrition. And I do an annual survey every year, and last year there was 140, which is about an eighth of the UK industry responses, and early attrition was one of the top 3 issues being mentioned by operation senior leaders. So early attrition is a real issue, and it's hugely frustrating, not just for RED, but for internal recruiters, for everyone who works really hard to recruit against all odds when we've got the reputation our industry has. And for me, again, there's some rather brilliant examples of modernised onboarding and training. There are also some rather hideous examples of commodity-based training. And again, and I know I'm a bore when it comes to generations, but again, for me, the key to unlocking success is unlocking the understanding of the generation. Because actually, if you look at how a Gen Z, and we can't just train everybody like they're a Gen Z, because of course we've got some, variance in the industry, but the majority are Gen Z. And if you look at how they learn, they don't learn by being thrown into a room and learning the history of insurance for a day, because after 20 minutes maximum, they'll be checked out.
And slide number 467 on the PowerPoint deck.
Exactly. And then they're given homework, and then they've got all that. Next day, hey, it's exciting, we're doing compliance training, and the next day we're doing this. And there are some, and even down to the aesthetics of it. We do the big, you're going to a major UK brand, you're going into customer service, which has such purpose. And power. It's such an important job, and then they get thrown into a sweatbox of a training room for 2 weeks and all the rest of it. So there's, we have a duty as an industry to not blame recruitment. And of course I'm going to say that, I'm a recruiter, right? But we have a duty to look at what the actual reason for leaving is. And so rarely it's, I didn't understand the job. But more often it's, I was oversold the role as I'm working for an amazing brand, and then I'm thrown into terrible training. And I have to say, I work with a lot of trainers who are exceptional. And trainers by trade are lovely people, right? Otherwise they're in the wrong job. And unfortunately, a lot of great, highly skilled trainers aren't given the opportunity to redesign the training as they'd really like to. And you loosen off the reins a little bit with some of these brilliant trainers, and suddenly they'll come up with great
It's not a space where there's a
training.
ton of innovation. And I think that's because it's very much coupled to the traditions of training, how it's always been done. That's not the way we do it here. I hear that a lot. And actually, I think you're right. But so if I want to move on to another question, but let me ask you this then, just off the back of that. If you could change one thing about training that would make it more innovative and more relevant to the generation that we're training, what would you change?
Make it much more personal, which makes me laugh, because I remember vividly speaking at an event about gold agents in 2017. This is unbelievable. And just at that point, America are always great, aren't they? All this stuff, and they're 5 years ahead of us. And they were talking about personalised training. The CIPD had just come out to say, we must make training individual and personal. And I remember talking at this event saying, can you imagine contact centres making training personal? And now I'm saying make training personal. But Gen Zs are individuals. They're not pack cult creatures. They don't like team.
Absolutely.
And putting them into a training room and saying, we'll all listen to you while you take a live, then they want to learn.
And I think they are
individually.
Team. I think they do like team personally. I would challenge that a little bit. I think it's not that I don't think that Gen Zs don't like team. I don't think that they like to think that team is the only way. They do have a very, I think Gen Zs in particular have a very great knack of coping as an individual and solutioning. Is that a word, solutioning? If it isn't, I just invented it.
They'll work as a team. They don't mind working as a team. They don't want their personal success to be reliant on the team.
Thank you.
So
that's what I was trying to say, Katie.
Yes. So in training, they want to go at their own speed. And if they want to reinforce their learning, they don't want to not do that because the team are ready to move on. They want to go, actually, I want to go over that again,
So
please.
you're building the training model around the tendencies, the speed, the learning styles, skills of the people who you're training, as opposed to saying, this is the model, this is how we're training it. One
day
size
one's
fits
this,
all.
day two's that.
Yeah.
And actually bouncing them in and out of the classroom really regularly to reinforce their learning back in. And if they need a bit of coaching time, so for me, the number one tip on training is reinforce it with great coaches who can give that individual stance.
You're speaking my language.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I was talking to, I don't know if you know Jackie Turner.
Yes, yeah.
So I was talking to Jackie Turner recently. And if you don't know Jackie Turner, she's an astounding trainer in contact centres.
And does a great playlist.
The dancing queen. And she was saying the same thing. We need to innovate around how we train this kind of new, or the current newest demographic, the Gen Zs and then Gen Alpha.
Absolutely. And to get to the point, anyone who says we can't get talent into contact centres, I absolutely disagree with. There are great people who want to work in contact centres. We are an industry of choice for talent. We absolutely are, I can tell you that. But we have to train them right. Okay.
What skills, bearing in mind the AI revolution, right? So we get AI, automation, lots of the sort of typically... I guess simplest transactions and so on are being kind of automated. The AI solutions that are being built in are taking a lot of that noise traffic away, leaving people needing to deal with the more sophisticated and complex queries. What skills do you think today separate? I hate to use this words, but what skills do you think today separates the average agent from the truly indispensable agents? What's the skills that separate them?
AI, right? How long have we talked about AI, technology changing our forever, haven't we?
But it feels like it's turning the corner.
And it's definitely intensifying, right? Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think we're talking about skills here.
Okay.
Because the skills of the job, as we've talked about, haven't actually changed. So what differentiates average from exemplary isn't someone who has the skills. It's someone who can cope with the intensity. Yep. And I'm sorry to dwell on this, but I think...
is that the skill? The skill is being able to cope with the intensity?
The personal skill of the agent is the person who can cope with the intensity of the job, and then we get back to resilience. Yeah, it is. And I think the context is really important in that the AI has changed that... because it's taken out all the lovely... when we first started, every 20 calls we get one nasty call. Yeah. And then we come off it and talk about the one nasty call and all of our mates would laugh about it. Yeah. And, it would be an anomaly. Yeah. And now what tech has done is mean from the very moment that agent logs on to the very moment they log off, they have got one nasty call. Customers are vile, right? Customers are... vile, and their behaviour is pretty disgusting to our agents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one after another, after another, after another. And that's different. So what makes a great agent, rather depressingly perhaps, is that they can cope with that intensity. I was talking to a really good contact of mine just earlier this week, who's a director of a really big brand. And he was saying, Katie, we've taken out an average of 200 seconds wrap-up. Average of 200 seconds per transaction wrap-up. That's massive for a regulated organisation. And I thought, I used to love wrap-up.
as an agent.
How do they relax now? And I thought,
how do you just clear your head?
Yeah. And now, we'd clear our head by then going on to 10 transactional calls. Or worse still, go to the pub for the hour at lunch and have a pint.
Imagine.
And how the workplace has changed,
how
right?
How dare you relax?
How the workplace has changed and that intensity.
You're right. And I think that's a real problem for me. And actually, I've got a similar story. I won't say the brand, but had a very similar conversation about a year ago with a particular brand who were over the moon that they had introduced auto queue. So basically, as soon as a call finished, there was a beep in the air.
Yeah.
Right. It was called forced wrap.
So
you had to then press wrap to get a breathing space. Right. But very often the queue was beeped in your ear so quickly you couldn't press wrap in time. So actually, had to get that. And so what you had agents doing was were using other aux codes to just find some respite to clear the last 5 angry calls, and then being put under the microscope and reprimanded for using other aux codes. And it's like, at what point do we see? Because you talked about agents not being commodities and being real people. Of course they are.
They're humans with feelings.
So why did in a reputation that we have as an industry, we're going to come on to that. Sometimes, I remember when we were agents, when people talked about, they weren't called contact centres, they were called call centres. And the word call centres makes me shudder.
I know, and I've said it twice at the start of this. I have a real issue with it. And I heard myself say it at the start of this podcast. I thought, Katie, what are you doing?
It's just, I hate the phrase.
Me too.
It's just connotations of sheep pens and bullies and
Thanks
people
for the old advert, chicken pens.
Yeah, remember that? And I think that the reputation that we had back in the day, and we'll go into this properly in a second, but the reputation we had was one of oppressive work cultures where people with very low skill sets went so they could eventually find a real job. And actually, when I look at contact centres, I actually see contact centres as maybe some of the most sophisticated technical environments.
Absolutely.
With some of the sharpest, most innovative, cleverest people, skill sets that I've ever worked with in any industry.
I totally agree.
But yet, even with that being a reality, and we know that's true, there's still this legacy reputation that contact centres have as still being places where people go to either die or take time to find a real job, and they aren't great cultures to work in. What do we need to do? If you could do one thing to change the public perception of contact centres to the polar opposite of what I've just described, what would you do to alter the public's perception of contact centres? Because I still think there's a problem.
Oh, there's a massive problem. There's such a big problem, and I'm doing quite a lot of work on this at the moment because it's...
Well, let's talk about that then.
Well, the thing is, there's two problems. There's the internal problem of what reality of a contact centre is and what those agents are facing day in, day out. And the bridge, as you said, between C-suite and really understanding how the contact centre is at the coalface. And contact centres are so important to the UK and supporting the UK through really troublesome times. Yeah. So there's the internal problem and perception, which is a bit perverse because that's actually, it's an easy job and it's a minimum wage job. Yeah. C-suite saying, pay them a minimum wage. They come in, they go home, they don't have to worry about anything and forget they're being yelled at and shouted at and sworn at. So there's an internal reputation, and then the external reputation drives me to absolute distraction, and it really upsets me because, the bottom line is we are a hugely important industry. We employ 1.16 million people, 3.5% of the working population of the UK. We contribute 3.5. I know I'm boring on Saturday.
No, that's
3.5 billion pounds to the economy, and the service economy is the largest part of our GDP. Yeah. So we should be really proud. When I speak at various awards and I talk about, can we be proud of what we contribute to the UK? But even our internal contact centre, when I'm delivering training out to clients and we talk about the purpose of contact centres, I'll see even some managers go, God, I didn't realise we contributed so much to the UK economy. And for people who are in the industry not to understand that, and you're purpose of your job is so important to your personal happiness. 100%. Your job's purpose is really, we both know that,
Yep.
you know, everyone will know that. And yet when you are in a, and I will try not to get political, but when you are in a...
Go on, get political.
Yeah, don't get me started. You. No, the team will definitely laugh at me watching that. They will say, don't let her talk about that.
We'll walk out.
But we're living in the UK where there's no mention of the loss of jobs in contact centre. You have to dig really hard. Yeah. But if Land Rover or a manufacturing company lose 300 jobs...
I have the same frustration.
It's a it hits the headlines for days. Yeah. And yet I can tell you about 4 of my key, really good contacts who have offshored in the last month. And it's no mention.
Yeah.
And I think we need to stand up as an industry and go, you know, what we contribute to the UK, the importance we have for the customers of the UK is super purposeful. And we need to we have to get together as an industry and shout about that.
There needs to be a dynamic shift in how the leadership across the industry are collaborating
Absolutely. Around this. Stop having glasses of wine over dinner and talking about it. You know, can we all get together and actually make something happen?
Don't get me started.
I know.
That whole scenario that you just described really frustrates me. I see a lot, and again, no disrespect to anyone, although this is quite disrespectful. I see a lot of these C-suite networking events, and they're great at getting the right people in the room, but I never see
action,
the needle move as a result of these things.
Yeah.
And it's the lack of action, as you say. But there needs to be quite a dynamic shift in how that collaborative bubble is formed around our industry, because I still think our industry, I think this is getting better. We are. There's better. We've moved away from what I dislike, which is networking, and more into community building. Yes. Within our industry. And I think there's a lot still to do there, but that's vitally important. Building supportive communities. And one of those communities needs to be how the leadership or the influencers or the decision makers within our industry are standing up and being the voice that you've just described.
Absolutely. With real influence. Because if you look at, let's say, the top 50 contact centres in the UK and the amount of people they employ. And we sound very cloak and dagger, but without asking permissions, I don't want to give any names. I had a really interesting conversation with someone recently who was saying, you know, over the time, their contact centre had employed 20,000 people nearly over the time in the region they were in, and never had an MP cross their doorstep. Never. Wow. Well, if that was a car manufacturing plant, they'd be visited every week. And we have to. And I think about this very often, rather sadly, probably. But we all started really in the early 90s. Mm-hmm. Most of the senior leaders in Ireland, just as contact centres were commercialising.
1998.
Yeah, exactly, 95. And contact centres were just becoming a commercial thing. And so naturally, we're all in the, I hate to say it, but the autumn of our careers, just when we're at the most powerful. Yeah. From the start of the industry. And we have an obligation almost for an industry that's treated us as senior leaders very well and given us huge opportunities to come together and go, right, if we can't make change happen and make the UK see quite how important our industry is, how brilliant it is at employing great talent and developing great talent, then we're never going to make change happen.
I think you're right. And I think it's less of a choice, and I think it's more of an obligation.
I totally agree. And I think everyone actually feels like that. We just have to stand up and do it.
Let's set it up. Let's get it going. You and me. Let's do it. Let's change the world.
Take the march. Steal the march.
Yeah. Let's grab the flag and climb the hill. Because at least something needs to happen.
Yeah, totally.
And being genuinely serious, something needs to happen, because if we go back to this conversation we had earlier about the obligation we have to our agents, how can we live up to any obligation to give them a fruitful career and work in a role where they go home at night and think, you know, I made a difference.
I made a difference and I have a purpose.
And I feel great because of that. Yeah, and I can't wait to go in tomorrow. Yeah. I am actually making a material difference to the life of people and my community, or whatever it is. How can we live up to anybody feeling remotely like that if we don't, first of all, do what we've just talked about?
Absolutely.
And bring the industry together and say, actually...
To prove the purpose.
You've just taken the words out of my mouth. Yeah. To define and prove the purpose that our industry actually has. Yeah. And the influence it has on our nation, and on, globally, you know, it's fascinating that this isn't being talked about more.
Well, you look at COVID, contact centres were at the heart of helping people during COVID. Some of the stories, some of the people, the absolute heroes in our industry that kept the country ticking.
Yeah.
And without, I have utmost respect for the NHS, utmost respect. So I don't mean this with any disregard, but I'm stood on my doorstep on a Thursday night clapping the NHS, thinking I'm not clapping the NHS, I'm clapping all those contact centres who are working on their beds,
totally.
Keeping our country going.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well as the NHS, right. Of course. But we have to, why we have to talk about that more.
We have to. Let's.
Yeah.
So you've been a really strong voice and advocate within the contact centre industry for a long time. What do you believe that leaders in our industry need to do differently to keep the people that you put in place as a recruitment agent, a recruitment organisation?
Yeah.
You do the due diligence, you do all the graft, and you put great people into this industry and these centres. What do you think that the leaders in those centres and those businesses need to do differently to keep those people motivated, engaged, and having a real deep sense of personal value?
The short answer is understand them.
Yeah.
And I'll caveat this by saying team leaders are my heroes. I would not do it to do a team leader's job today is credit to them.
How much do we ask
They
of
get
them?
blamed for everything. I'm leaving because of my team leader. C-suite, we're failing because of the team leaders. Credit to team leaders of today.
Absolutely.
So this is nothing about... But team leaders, I'm afraid, have to understand the workforce.
Yeah.
Because the workforce... And not because the team leaders are malicious or underskilled, just because they're different.
Yep.
So for me, the number one thing would be to train our middle management, our team leaders and middle management on understanding today's workforce. And when I do a lot of work with, I do quite a lot of training work, as you know, and the generational training is the most valuable training. Understand that
How do we
generation.
do that then? How do we do that? How would you practically engage that?
By training the team leaders on understanding that they are from Venus and an agent is from Mars, and they have to understand the difference.
Yeah.
And they are clothed differently, quite literally often, and they are hardwired differently, and their expectations are different. So we have to peel back the onion skins of what a Gen Z agent looks like. And there's some really low-hanging fruit there to make a really quick difference to attrition.
Yeah, it's funny when you said they're clothed differently. It just, for some reason, the agent inside me rose to the surface. And I remember the battles, and I think the battles still go on about dress down Fridays and stuff. And
don't get me started.
and is it even important? I mean, for me, as a centre leader, as a business leader within contact centres, I don't care about business dress, for example. I just don't.
No.
Right? But I think culturally it's important to talk about it because it's another one of those layers within the culture that people work in, which make them want to be there or not. Does it really matter if you're dressed formally or business dress or not, as long as it's appropriate?
Yeah.
I'm
old and boring, right? And I'm quite traditional.
Are these the rules being set by people of our
and we've always
demographic?
been suited at RED, and I've dropped that now because we feel like auditors when we go into the contact centre clients. But I'm going to reverse that a little bit and give you a little bit more data that might be useful to prove this point. One of the most frustrating things as a recruiter is you'll find a great, internal or external recruitment, you'll find a great person, and I think, I always say to our team, if you feel like they could give your mother a good service, they're probably a great agent. Yeah. And I find a great agent, I think they're amazing. And then I'm thinking, right, they're definitely going to get offered. And then we have the feedback, no, they're not going to get an offer because they turned up for an interview in a hoodie. You put 100 Gen Zs in a room and say, put your hand up if you've got a suit. 10 put their hand up.
Yeah, I was going to say 1, but yeah.
10% of a Gen... Only if they've been to a funeral will a Gen Z have a... Why else would a Gen Z have a suit? They just wouldn't.
Yeah. I'm laughing because it's real. It's true.
Whereas if you put 100 millennials in a room who are the hiring managers because they're the team leaders and say, hands up if you've got a suit, 90 of them will put their hand up.
Yeah, I think I'm suffering from Benjamin Button syndrome because I actually used to be completely suited and booted.
Yeah, totally. So
even
did
a
I.
tie.
Yeah.
Who wears ties?
I know.
Anybody?
I know.
Does anybody wear ties?
No.
And I actually took. I had 10 suits, and I've left myself with one.
Yeah.
For
funerals.
Yeah. That's it.
So why would a Gen Z who hasn't been to a funeral, apart from when they were very young and it was a grandparent, have a suit? So to actually ask them, and in a cost of living crisis, and for a minimum wage job,
does it even matter anymore?
No.
Dress code? It doesn't, does it?
No, but it does matter to ask them. You know, we at this contact centre are dressed in business casual. You're obviously not business casual today. Can I ask how you would dress to come for work? How you think it would be appropriate to dress to come to work? Well, yes, when I get a job, I'll buy myself a pair of chinos.
Yeah, fair play.
You know, but not make assumptions because they haven't bought a pair of chinos that they'll never wear again and a shirt to come to an interview when they're on minimum wage.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I've actually horrifically, I remember one environment sending agents home. How embarrassing.
Don't.
Go home and change and come back.
I know.
So go home at your own expense on the bus and the train, change and come. How embarrassing.
I'm
for
laughing
that
because I
person.
told that story on the way up the motorway today.
I stopped it happening once. I said, no,
I know.
sit down, enjoy your day. What are you doing?
I know.
Put yourself in that person's position.
Yeah.
And I think we just need, this is the whole respect value thing about the work culture. I know we're kind of veering off on a bit of a tangent here, but
how the workplace has changed.
It's just simple things that respect is everything, isn't it?
Absolutely. And to show you how old I was, on my very first day at my corporate job in recruitment, I turned up in a very nice Austin Reed suit. It was a trouser suit. How dare I? I know. Jeez. How dare I in 1994 turn up in a trouser? And they sent me home because I was a woman wearing trousers.
No, they didn't.
And they told me to go home and put a skirt suit on.
They did not.
So imagine doing that today.
Oh my God, how archaic is that?
So yeah, but still there, you know. But we will say in 3 or 4 years' time, how archaic was it we refused someone a job because they wore jeans to the interview?
Exactly,
we will say that.
Yeah.
And we'll laugh at ourselves, but I cannot tell you how often that happens.
Hiring your skills, not your dress sense. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I want your skills. But when you come to work, we want you to be respectful, and this is our dress code, because they don't know that before interview.
Yeah, but you can be casually dressed, and I don't know, we're labouring this point quite a while, so it must be important at some level, but you know, you can be casually dressed and still dress respectfully to the business.
Yes.
You can.
Yes. Clean and tidy. It's a bit like a hotel room, yeah? It doesn't have to have all the bells and whistles, but you want it to be clean and tidy.
Look at that analogy. Look at that. Yeah. I'm getting them free. I'm writing that down. I'm going to use that. Okay, so how do we stop? One of the things that, and I've talked with a couple of educational bodies on this. One of the things I've always championed, actually, I'm going to withdraw that and say that differently. One of the things I've always tried to champion, and I must find the time to do this, some proper service. I may call on your help. So when you're at school and you talk to the careers officer, when you're getting to that end bit of your high school education, and suddenly the career officer pops up, and you know, what do you want to do when you leave school? And they try to place you into industries and encourage you to. I've never seen the contact centre industry, almost 4% of our working population operate within, ever appear on that list of opportunities. And one of the things I want to do, and I'd love to see happen before I exit the industry, is I'd love to see that as an option for kids leaving school, as a career option. Yeah. A definitively strong career opportunity to go in as an agent and develop through that industry into directorship and whatever it is. Yeah. It's a real great model for a career. And the second thing is that I would love for it to be seen in general by the public as an admirable choice.
Industry of choice, yeah.
Yeah, industry of choice, yeah. And how do we, is that, am I fantasizing? Is that possible? Is there a value in that conversation even happening at a school level?
Yes, there definitely is, because, and I think it's a really good time for that conversation to be happening in schools as higher education is becoming less popular, as it's becoming more expensive. Yeah. So when we're talking about universities and so on, reducing, now's probably our time to do that. But again, gosh, I sound like I'm being really harsh on leadership teams of contact centres. But again, I think a lot falls on the C-suite leadership teams here to actually change their expectations of what they're expecting from the contact centre. And I get, for me, the big key to unlock the challenge of attrition and the challenge of what you're talking about, industry of choice, is to reduce our expectations of how long someone's now going to stay in that contact centre. Yeah. So, pre-COVID,
2 years, wasn't it?
We expected even 3 years. Early 2000s, we expected someone to stay in 3 years. Then it came down to 2 years. Yeah. And now it's really a year to 18 months. The best... If we can get agents competent, and there's a question there, right? What should speed of competence be? And AI should certainly help that.
And what does competency look like?
Yeah, and what does competency... But if we can get a proven return on investment from agents within 3 months now, then for me, a year is on the outside. And our contact centres should be seen as a brilliant ground for learning customer and building and growing talent for the wider business and a passport into the wider business. But we still battle with this. No, they've got to have 18 months or they've got to have 2 years. It's not going to happen. A Gen Z is not going to spend that long, even if they're training to be an accountant, which is seen as an industry of choice. They're not going to do that for 2 years, let alone be shouted at by customers consistently for 7.5 hours a day.
And if you ask people who keep saying 2 years, why? I'm gambling that they wouldn't know the answer because it's just a static mantra.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a repetitive statement. It's just
a
become
habit
what
we've
you
learned.
say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a habit. It's a habit form statement.
Yeah.
And actually, justify why 2 years is important. And actually, I think it's just a habit.
And how great would it be if we could reduce our attrition to sub 20% as an industry, and we could say, right, after a year, you can passport into the wider business, and it doesn't matter how bad the training is then. I'm going to stick it out because I can see in a year's time, so long as I become competent and hit my targets and everything else, and Gen Zs, by the way, are inherently, they've gamified since they were born. So targets are a great thing for them, and you tell them what to hit and they'll hit it.
That's so true.
So, and then we get that 9 months of brilliance from them, but we're always recruiting at the bottom to bring that new talent in, and we're solving the wider business's recruitment issues. Yep. I was with a really big private health organisation, and I happened to be with their FD, and he started in the contact centre, and he said, "Do you know what, Katie? Even as FD of this business, it was the best grounding for me because I now understand why it's so important that we keep our customers happy because it directly affects our revenue." Blah 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 blah. And if we stop wasting talent because we're trying to eke them out for this amount of time, yes, it will be a bit more costly on the recruitment of the front end for the contact centre, but it'll be a whole lot less costly for the whole company recruitment process
and better
because we'll be internally growing great talent that we teach the customer to first, which should every person in an organisation should understand the customer.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll hang on to that sentence. That's pretty powerful. I think you're absolutely right. I think that one of the key things for me as well is that when people have this derogatory view about agent level contact center employment and jobs, I went through the whole machine the way you did, and I can't think of another way that I could have learned not just about how to operate and survive and do well in contact centers, but the negotiation skills, the socialization skills, the people skills, the conversational skills, the language development skills.
Technology.
It helped me model myself as a human being. Technology, but just the human skill set around talking, listening,
the
hearing,
interpersonal skill,
debating. All that great. It's an incredible environment to work in.
Yeah.
And
totally.
I think it just brings us back to that whole thing about we need to shout louder about the value that it actually does have and the purpose that it serves.
Yeah.
But probably
and anyone watching this who hasn't seen the Stephen Bartlett video clip where he says it's all down to my contact centre, because I learnt sales skills, and I still use those sales skills that I was taught in a double glazing business in Manchester. They taught me how to sell, and I still use those those sales skills to convince investors in the biggest boardrooms in the world.
Yeah.
And you know, that's how powerful contact centre is.
Yeah,
and it's not, you know, you sit around if you fill this room with 20 directors, contact centre directors, customer experience directors, operations directors of amazing brands. You don't get that opportunity largely by going in and starting as an accounts junior.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
Contact centre grows great talent.
Yeah, and we'll put the link, folks, to that Stephen Bartlett
Yeah, it's really
clip,
powerful.
in the post somewhere. You can find that. So if you had to give one piece of advice, Katy, to both employers and candidates in the contact centre industry for thriving over the next decade, one piece of advice for employers and candidates, what would that piece of advice be? From your perspective as a giant in the industry.
A giant, stop it. Only in literal physical sense. For candidates, it would be, for the workers, it would be take every opportunity your organisation gives you. Because contact centres, by and large, are part of really big, impressive brands and organisations. And put your head above the parapet and put yourself out of your comfort zone, which isn't very easy for a Gen Z. Go and push yourself and take every opportunity, every free training course, every virtual training course, because you have huge opportunity in this industry. I think that would be for candidates or for workers. And in 10 years' time, you'll probably be a senior leader within a really nice brand.
Yeah.
It's probably cheesy, but for the employers, we just need to remember our agents are humans with real human feelings who have joined our industry because they want to stay and do a great job. And they are not people who are trying to disrupt. By and large, we've all got a few, haven't we? Internal terrorists. Doesn't matter what your industry is. Internal terrorists.
But they've always existed.
But
That's not particular to Gen Z.
No, exactly.
Good God.
So let's just remember as employers that cohort of agents are trying to be brilliant and their intent is right.
Against all the odds.
Against all the odds and with vile customers.
Yes.
So let's try and work out how they're thinking.
Celebrate the potential.
Absolutely. Celebrate the potential, manage to our best while limiting our liability, obviously.
I love it.
By having the right processes in place to limit our liability, but manage to our best, not our worst.
Yeah. Manage to our best and not our worst.
Yeah.
Love that.
I think.
All right,
it's easier said than done, granted.
Yeah.
Granted.
Well, listen, you've done CXER. Well
I
done.
have done CXER in this most amazing. I'm sort of in awe of how amazing this place is.
Well, great, thank you. I'm very proud of it.
Yeah, so you should be.
I think, like I said at the very top of this, it would have been nothing other than the easiest of choices to work out who was going to be the first person on. And the queue of guests that we have are so impressive, but I think that I'm delighted this was you.
Oh, well, thank you, Al.
And some of the things you've talked about today, I am utterly confident will resonate for such a long time with hopefully the right people who needed to hear some of that.
Well, hopefully.
And that's great. So listen, this camera, tell everybody what's coming up on the horizon for RED Recruitment. What's next?
What's next? We are growing again, thank goodness, after some... as everyone had after the COVID days and regrowing. So a lot of training our newbies and internally promoting our great people. Thank you, team. But what's next is looking forward to riding the storm of the next 5 years of contact centres and seeing what it's got to throw at us, but enjoying every second.
Great, which you'll be helping shape.
Fingers crossed.
With your amazing team. I guess for any business or decision maker or owner who is looking to partner with a great recruitment business, you'll get all of Katy and RED Recruitment's contact details. You can see some of that stuff across the bottom of the screen now, and obviously in the post as well. And just reach out because you won't be making anything else than a good
Al.
choice.
Brilliant.
Katie, thank you.
Oh, it's been lovely to see you, Al.
Let's knock it on the head.
Yeah, thanks, Al.
All right, thanks a lot. And then just adjust it as you see fit. It wants to be, about that's good. A wee bit, maybe a bit closer to your mouth.
Closer? Are you sure? I'm quite loud.